Independence. Such a lovely word. But what does it mean? Well, the definition is the fact or state of being independent. Very helpful, Wiki. Seems like the state has somehow got a hold of Wiki. So sad. Because it is run by an objectivist. Did you know that? Anyway, rabbit holing. How about we try to define it another way? Ayn Rand said, independence is the recognition of the fact that yours is the responsibility of judgment and nothing can help you escape it, that no substitute can do your thinking, as no pitch hitter can save your life, that the vilest form of self-abasement and self-destruction is the subordination of your mind to the mind of another, the acceptance of an authority over your brain, the acceptance of his assertions as facts, his say-so as truth, his edicts as middleman between your consciousness and your existence. Whoa, that's a mouthful. So let's just break this down a little. Ayn Rand is saying those who are free of mind cannot truly lose their independence. But I would say we have lost it. What is the good of having a free mind if you can't express it to one another? Now, at this point, some of you are saying, Objectivist girl, what you talking about? Well, let me take you through history and show you how America lost its independence, and then I'm going to show you what we did about it. Shortly after the Revolution, many American citizens were boozing, brawling, and having lots of premarital sex. But the Founding Fathers didn't like this, so to end the fun, they created democracy. During their first years of America, drunkenness was not punished, but it was even encouraged. Indeed, men would show up drunk to work and drink after. This was expected and fine, because workers knew the value of the dollar, because most men worked for themselves in small shops with no boss. But somehow, without this order, they got by. In fact, you would think with less social order and legislation, there would be less freedom. But in fact, the drinking stopped the Common Council from passing any restrictive laws against blacks partaking in these shenanigans as well. In fact, the greatest crime of the society, it was said, was that the slaves were treated as equal and sometimes even as superior. So does drunkenness equal equality? Maybe so. In fact, women even enjoyed freedom from sexual shame. Yet somehow, through all this depravity, men still created amazing things in their working hours. Why? To build a better life for themselves. As Ayn Rand puts it, achieving life is not the equivalent of avoiding death. Joy is not the absence of pain. Wait, what? Look, let me help. Ayn Rand was saying that people are more motivated by happiness than they are by fear. When restrictions are put up, people eventually get mad and get even. You'll see this in the Whiskey Rebellion. Indeed, the Founding Fathers knew what we like to ignore today, that democracy is the antithesis of freedom. You can see the downhill slope when the Founding Fathers began shaming the colonists for their behaviors. One of the most respected revolutionary doctors, Rush, no, not the band, the doctor, came up with the theory of alcoholism. And you can see early rehabilitation centers in the society. And thus, we see a liquor tax advocated in the Federalist Papers. This is the first noted instance in history of the government using regulation to solve moral issues in society. Alexander Hamilton became the first freedom terrorist by passing the whiskey tax. Then came the Whiskey Rebellion. Then followed arrests for prostitution, when the society was happy and functioning well as it was. The punishments were of course larger for white women sleeping with black men. This is where you see race seriously come into legislation for the society. The right likes to insist that the Founding Fathers were defenders of the free market, while the left likes to make them out to be defenders of the merchant class. They were neither. They were simply moral guardians in the worst way, making the society more repressed and just more secretive in their immorality. You'll see this again in the Prohibition era. You can't make people be moral. That's what Ayn Rand was saying before. After the slaves were freed, they were expected to behave a certain way, with the same moral rules that had been implemented on whites, and to join the military and serve their country in return for their freedom. You know, the freedom they had because of nature, not because it was bestowed upon them by a government, but we'll ignore this for the moment. I've made videos on this topic already. The task force for this initiation was teaching ex-slaves to work for work's sake instead of wealth. As I've gone over before, this is bad philosophy. Following this, we saw a stricter push for government employees for traditional marriage. Non-marital relations among ex-slaves was also outlawed, defying separation of church and state. Though American consumption of alcohol did decline after the Civil War, it did remain a huge hub for alcoholism. 10 years after the founding of the Freedmen's Bureau in 1865 and the founding of the WCTU in 1874, when citizens and those being trained for citizenship were told to avoid public places of sin and renounce personal pleasure, 62 million gallons of liquor were consumed in the United States. So are regulations and moral shaming effective? To that, history gives us a hell no. And through all of this, the government made sure to assert its dominance over the southern states. When they allowed them back into the Union, they granted them schools, roads, churches, and other things as a good boy pat on the head, like the US does with our drinking age laws. If you don't know about this, look it up. But long story short, the US decided they wanted the drinking age to be 21, so they withheld state funding for roads until the states complied. And that's how 18-year-olds lost the right to drink, but can still serve in the military. Also, before 1886, and before the moral police started in on it, prostitution was legal and was a thriving part of the US economy. Some would say prostitution held up the country or held it down, depending on your preference. Prostitution was also safe in regards to lack of alcoholism, drugs, and crime. In fact, in cases where prostitutes were robbed or wronged in any way, the courts would often rule in their favor. The courts realized back then that it was their job to protect rights, not to be the moral compass for the people. Look at how far we've gone, and I'm not even to the 20th century. But just a preview, by then, sex had become stigmatized completely. It was now shameful and immoral. We are just now, as a generation, recovering from this logical fallacy. If you want, check out the Mann Act, also called the White Slave Traffic Act, which is still in effect today in some states. White women can't be transported across state lines for immoral purposes. I won't even focus on the looseness of that term, but will state that as a woman, I am deeply offended. Oh, and you'll love this little gem. In 1913, 12 states passed laws that allowed judges to order mandatory sterilization. And these are just a few of the crimes the government has committed against independence in just the 17th and 18th centuries. Don't even get me started on their crimes against free business or any of the other things they implemented to restrict freedom just in this generation's lifetime. The Patriot Act, 2012's National Defense Authorization Act, raids on the Occupy movement, banning in 12 states from recording police, eavesdropping laws, potential use of GPS to track any suspicious citizens' activities, surveillance drones on U.S. soil, and this is just to name a few. This is simply the stuff you should take personally. So I ask you, are we really independent? I didn't think so. So I asked a few people. Can you tell me what independence means to you?
Independence to me means you have the freedom to do certain things in life. Very sort of freedom.
Thinking with your own mind, not following the crowd. Having your own viewpoints, even if it doesn't necessarily go along with everybody else's viewpoints. Kind of paving your own lane and making your own way.
I think that's what I think independence is, just, doing what you actually believe, following yourself and not following others.
I think independence means when you are legally allowed to make your own decisions and that no one tells you what you want to do, but that's your own choice.
Ability to do things without interference.
Independence to me as a person means knowing yourself, knowing when you need to rely on other people and depend on other people, because no one's completely self-sufficient. But it also means having a certain level of autonomy at the same time. There's a balance between those two.
What does it mean to be free as a people?
To be free as a people? That's a tough one. To be free as a people, as a group of people? I would have to say that to be free as a people, democracy comes to mind. What else comes to mind? Democracy comes to mind, but that's not true freedom either, because even then we're subject to the opinions and beliefs of our peers.
Okay.
So I don't think there really is a true freedom as a people.
Yeah, or guns, or the typical freedom that people would think of. But I think a lot of people get sidetracked, and they really kind of look into that too much, and a lot of freedoms can be taken away in the process.
Yeah, the right to bear arms, and not saying that everyone should have guns and we should all be, carrying around guns, but it's in, our Constitution, correct? I just want to make sure. It's in our Constitution,
It's the Second Amendment.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's exactly what I think. For them to be making people so afraid of guns and stuff like that, that's what it makes me nervous, that they're going to start taking more freedoms away from us.
I think freedom comes first, then comes independence. I think freedom is on a much deeper level, basic freedoms. Freedoms that we enjoy, many of us enjoy in the United States these days.
That you have your own rights, that you have no law saying you have to do these, but they are also demanding you do these.
Freedom to be independent.
So what did I learn from this? Even though people aren't as informed about our government, our Constitution, and our history as we would like them to be, the spirit of liberty seems to still be alive in there somewhere. The search for autonomy, that understanding that we have rights naturally, and that realization that we are losing freedom as well. So, liberty is in our hearts. And I don't think any of these people actually thought we were free and independent. But really, according to their definitions, none of us are free. But they still came to celebrate a holiday about independence. So I guess it was time for some activism.
So, Neil, can you tell me why it is that you think that New Hampshire should be independent?
Well, I think the concept of independence is a really great one. It allows for self-determination, allows for us to live our lives how we see fit, rather than rulers many, many miles away making decisions for us. And we're out here celebrating Independence Day, now popularly known as the 4th of July. But we're celebrating it because we threw off oppressive rulers back in the 1700s. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in a position where we have to do that again. Washington has eaten out our sustenance. They've done all that very colorful language that you'll find in the Declaration of Independence, they're guilty of themselves. And so the only way to really reclaim our liberty and independence is by saying, well, let's make New Hampshire free. Let's make New Hampshire free.
Prosecutors and police chiefs proclaimed Oswald's guilt and clamored for the death penalty. But less than 48 hours after the assassination, the sentence of Lee Harvey Oswald became a moot point.
You have anything to say in your defense? There's a shot. Oswald has been shot. To me, he appears dead. There is a gunshot wound in his lower abdomen.
Lee Harvey was a friend of mine. I was born in Dallas in 1952. Lee Harvey moved across the street on Bentley Avenue. He used to the bottom of me when I was just a kid. Say he shot the president, well, I don't think he did. He was a friend of mine. He used to take me fishing all the time. He used to bother me when I was just a kid. Say he shot the president, well, I don't think he did. Seen the picture of him with the pamphlets and a gun. Shadows pointing every which way, but there's just one son. Someone picked that photo and stuck away in head. Say he shot the president, well, I don't think he did. He was a friend of mine. He used to take me fishing all the time. He used to throw the ball to me when I was just a kid. Say he shot the president, well,